the first table next to the door is Martin Sains, and he is working with the census. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the census, either how it works or what you could do perhaps working with the census, Martin will be there to answer your questions, and Carmen Mendez is also here with him. This particular election, okay, I need my phone. This particular runoff election, well, early voting starts Tuesday, January 14th.
No, next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
That's the 20th.
21st? Our website's wrong.
Yes, I'm going to
Okay.
tell you that.
All right. And election day for this runoff election is January 28th? Okay. All right. Shortly after that, there will be the primaries for our national elections in March. And there's a whole nother host of early voting times and regular voting times. I want to tell you some of the changes that have happened last year for voting so that you can enjoy some of the benefits that our county commissioners have helped make happen for us. So one of them is that there is no longer a need to go to your precinct to vote, polling station to vote. You can vote at any polling station anywhere in Dallas County. All you need is your voter card and a bit of ID, and you can go anywhere within the county to cast your ballot. This is a huge improvement. Let's see. A change that has occurred that won't affect this race because it's just this one particular thing is there is no longer a straight ticket ballot. And so when we get to the elections coming in May, there will be lots of races on the ballot, and I implore you to go all the way down the ballot and vote on every race that you can possibly vote on. The League of Women Voters creates a voter guide that gives the candidates questions on issues related to whatever office they're running for, and the engaged candidates answer our questions, and we put them in our voting guide. The voting guide is printed, and the voting guide is available online at Vote 411 and at libraries. So if you use the digital version, you put in your address, and it will show you only those races you can vote on, so that you're not being distracted by a bunch of races that have nothing to do with where you can cast who you can vote for. I think that's a wonderful way to eliminate some of the confusion and divisiveness that's going on. Okay. Elections, this runoff primaries. Okay. At your chair, there are two handouts. There's a handout and then there's a button. I want to talk about the handout first. This is a printout from the voter guide that was from last November that, with the questions for Texas House District 100 and the responses from our two candidates that are here tonight. So you can take that home and you can see the questions, the kind of questions we asked for this race, and what their responses were in November to those questions. And that will help give you a little more context in relation to the questions and answers you hear this evening. The other item that is at your chair is a button. I'm wearing one, but it keeps getting covered by my jacket. January 14th of 2020 is the 100th and February 14th, thank you, is the 100th anniversary of, did I lose it? Okay. There it goes, okay. Of the League of Women Voters National. 100 years of action in our political lives, making people better informed so that they can cast a better ballot, helping people get engaged in the voting process, and interacting with their elected officials, not just before they get elected, but after, when they're beginning to deal with the issues that we all care about. Thank you.
I'm going to stand actually over at this table, and I'm going to give them this microphone. We're going to test and make sure that this works. Flexible. Okay, so here we are. Okay, thank you. Now, I would like to say that each of the candidates will introduce themselves. Everything we do is to ensure fairness, and we have a timekeeper here in the front row who will talk about, show the card that'll give them 15 seconds to the end, and then a red card that will say it's time to stop. They can finish the sentence, but not the paragraph. We want to cover lots of topics. Okay, they will start with a 3-minute presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Armstrong, and I'm running for House District 100. I grew up in West Dallas, as many of you guys know, to a single mother who had to fight her way through poverty to provide a better life for me and my sister. It was hard back then. In fact, we were just laughing on my way over here about a time where three of us had to sleep on a twin-sized bed on the floor of the Typiek Apartments off of Burnell. Went to C.F. Carr Elementary, just right down the street. And many of you guys don't know, when I went to C.F. Carr, I had a learning disability. I could not read, and they wanted to put me in special ed. My mom, she felt that it would be best that we go to another school district. So we moved out of West Dallas, not by choice, but because there were better opportunities. We moved to Mesquite. I was able to graduate salutatorian, West Mesquite High School, go on to Baylor University, and came back, after graduating, came back to work at J.P. Morgan as a securities banker. I remember it like it was yesterday. I came to West Dallas for my grandmother was cooking Sunday dinner, and I didn't go to West Dallas when I came back to college much. But I remember driving down Canada Drive, and I remember seeing the condition of my neighborhood, the hood that raised me. I remember seeing my old classmates on the street corners. I can remember seeing the homes that once were vibrant and stable, now crumbling. And I can remember talking to my granddad and said, I want to get involved. I want to help my community. So I got involved, and he said, okay, you want to help? The church needs a church janitor. So that's where I started serving in West Dallas. Because of my housing background, and while I was a student at Baylor, was actually able to win the Audrey Nelson Community Development Award by President Bush when I was working with the housing department at Baylor. Mike Rollins appointed me to the Housing Finance Board, and I served I was his housing advisor 6 of his 8 years. So housing has been very important to me because, number one, housing was the one thing that stabilized my family. Once we moved to Mesquite, we were able to buy a house, and it literally changed the trajectory of my family. And that's why I'm running, because I believe that every Texan deserves a right to the Texas promise of prosperity. Doesn't matter if you're black or white, doesn't matter if you come from the north or south, doesn't matter if you're educated or not, you deserve a piece of the pie. And I believe that we can improve economic mobility by 3 things. Number one, we have to invest in early childhood education. We have to make it a priority every legislative session to invest in early childhood education. Number 2, affordable housing and economic development. And number 3, public safety and transparency. I believe with those 3 things that we can improve economic mobility in our city. Thank you.
said this in the beginning, but may I ask that you not make comments and that you not applaud? And the reason is we can have more time for our candidate forum, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorraine Burabille, and I have lived in this district for 20 years. I live in Buckner Terrace on the other side of the district, so don't hold it against me. But I have been working in this part of the district for quite some time. Many of you in this room remember me from my work with Congressman Vesey as well as County Judge Clay Jenkins. It is because I love this district. It is because of the work that I've been engaged in. I've been helping at the federal, state, and local level, doing the things that matter, that help everyday people. Things like doing job fairs, helping people with reentry to qualify for jobs, helping do small business workshops to connect small businesses with resources, and community-based nonprofit grant writing workshops to make sure that nonprofits, not just the large ones, get access to the funding they need to be successful. Oftentimes, these smaller community-based groups are the ones that are really doing the heavy lifting in our community. So a lot of people think that's why I'm running. And it is because of that work I've been doing is why we've earned so much support. Some of our endorsements include Better O'Rourke, Congressman Mark Vesey, County Judge Clay Jenkins, Wendy Davis, and many other strong Democrats. But that's not why I'm running. I'm running because I have an 8-month-old daughter. She never got to meet her grandmother. Her grandmother died a month and 4 days before she was born because she was in the Medicaid gap. She was a registered nurse, worked her whole life to take care of other people, but when she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, she didn't have access to care. And that's why I'm doing this, because decisions that are being made in Austin right now as we speak are not in the interest of people like us. I think it's time that we put people ahead of politics, and that's the reason why I'm doing this. We have 1 million Texans that are just like Millie, earning too much to qualify but not enough to pay out of pocket, who literally their lives hang in the balance. There are people in Texas who are dying for health care, and that is unconscionable. We're better than that, and that's why I'm doing this. In me, I also want you to know that you have a fighter. I'm proud to have served as an intervener on the voter ID lawsuit. And in fact, one of the key witnesses that helped us with that lawsuit was Ms. Vera Trotter, who lived across the street from the Westmoreland Heights Neighborhood Association. So when I say that I may not have grown up in West Dallas, but my relationships and my roots run deep, and know that in me, you have someone who will always be committed to serving our community. You don't have to wonder what I will do because you can look at what I have done. And if I'm fortunate enough to serve, if I'm fortunate enough for you to put your trust in me, the gravity of that is not lost upon me because I know that lives hang in the balance. But I can't do it by myself. Everything I've done has been because of people in the community, people like Ms. Stevens and others who are active in our neighborhoods, people like Ronnie Mestis. So together we can do it. And if you want to join me, please visit my website, lorrainefortexas.com, to sign up.
Thank you. Now you understand the timing system. So we will move forward, and I will be getting some cards to ask questions. But we have some others just to start us off. And the first one is more about health insurance. That's a critical issue for this neighborhood. Texas ranks dead last in the nation on health insurance coverage. How will you address the availability of health insurance coverage in Texas? Mr. Armstrong went first, so now you will go first in answering the questions.
Thank you. I may have addressed this earlier, and I'm sorry if I sound like I'm beating a dead drum, but 1 million Texans is a big deal. And if we can expand access to care, literally, we could do that through the state legislature, and that would be overnight. This would not require any sort of additional funding mandate from the state. This is literally our state accepting federal dollars that have already been allocated for our state. And so that is part of the reason why this role is so critical, because we need to make sure we elect someone who can go to Austin and get the job done. It's not enough to beat the drum. It is enough when we can work with colleagues and also when we can help elect people who will side with our community. In this race, you have the opportunity to elect one state legislator. Our state has 150 of them, but we can only choose one person. So we have to choose the person that's going to be most likely to be able to win support for the initiatives that are prioritized for this community. I'm the only person in this race that has a successful track record of beating the Republicans up and down the ballot and at the courthouse.
Let me first say that healthcare is very important, but if it could be fixed with one stroke of a pen, it would have already been done. It's a multi-solution that we have to bring to the table. Number one, I dealt with a family, and they were not able to qualify for Medicaid because their income was just $2 above the limit. We have to start there. We have to raise that limit so that families who do not even cannot identify as middle class can qualify for Medicaid. That's one of the various things. But as I've said from the beginning, I believe that if we approach things through the lens of economic opportunity and economic mobility, that we put more money in people's pockets, I believe that people want to pay for their own health care. And so that's how I would fix the health care situation.
You can keep them. Well, no, I need them. This is going to be a second. Okay. Thank you. Are you dedicated to the people as a whole in addressing the concerns and the needs in your district? Or are you driven to nonprofits who speak on behalf of the residents? What have you done to show you are for all people and not just for some people?
So I will say, I assume since we're in West Dallas, this applies to West Dallas, but I will say West Dallas has had a history of nonprofit representation from people who are not from West Dallas. In fact, I'm one of the first nonprofit leaders in West Dallas that's actually from West Dallas. And so I believe while nonprofits should have a seat at the table, I believe everyone should have a seat at the table. I believe it requires an opinion and perspective from multiple individuals. And when you have situations, I can't go into detail in a minute, but when you have a situation where people are coming from outside the neighborhood to speak for the neighborhood, then you really have issues on if the neighborhood is benefiting. But many of you know my track record. I've fought with you, I've walked with you, I've advocated with you, and it's always been about the people in West Dallas. It's always been about those who cannot speak for themselves, those who cannot stand up for themselves.
I am extremely proud of the work that I've been doing, working hand in hand with residents. I am a 10-year precinct chair, and so I worked with people in my community. When I worked for the U.S. House of Representatives, I worked with constituents to help them navigate the various agencies to make sure that they had a favorable outcome if legally possible. And so I actually, that is something that I have particular expertise in. And so if I'm fortunate enough to serve, I would definitely put all of that experience to bear in this role. In fact, when I was responsible for District 33, that covered 700,000 constituents. This district is 170,000. So I am very confident that the experience that I had with 700,000 constituents would definitely be applicable to this particular district, District 100, where's my home. I've lived here for 20 years. But I would be remiss if I said that nonprofits have no role at all. I think that a nonprofit, though, should not be an intermediary between government and the people. The people have a legal right to voice their opinion, and no one in this race has done more on voter protection to make sure that every eligible voter has the right to vote and that their vote counts. And so if I'm fortunate enough to serve, I will continue that effort.
Thank you. West Dallas was split into three, thank you. West Dallas was split into three districts for state representative. District 100, 103, and 104 in the 2010 redistricting process for the school board, state representative, and state senator. What is your perspective in redistricting West Dallas? And Ms. Maribel will go first.
Thank you. I believe I mentioned my work in voting rights, but I didn't particularly hone in on redistricting. As I mentioned before, this is something I've been involved with. I've been pretty much involved with every major piece of litigation involving voter ID and redistricting, although I was not an intervener on the redistricting lawsuit. I will say this, because I've seen up close and personal how the process works, I will assure you that if I'm fortunate enough to serve this district, I'm going to work hard to make sure that West Dallas is unified. I think it's important that district lines are not drawn along census tracts, that they're actually drawn to keep communities of interest together. And I think that helps ensure that communities can get adequate representation. Otherwise, their vote is diluted. And so that is something I've been involved in a long time, and so you don't have to wonder if that's something I'm committed to do. It's something I'm absolutely committed to doing. And so fortunate enough to serve, I will work very hard to make sure West Dallas is in one district for State House. We can't do anything at the city level to deal with that or school board, but we can certainly affect state and above how the district lines are drawn for West Dallas.
So I want to answer the question very specifically. If blessed enough to serve as your state rep, I will make sure that West Dallas is in one district. We've seen the effects of a neighborhood being broken up and having to go to multiple elected officials for one issue in West Dallas. I've worked on census, I've worked on redistricting in college, but I know firsthand because I've served with you, I've walked with you, I've fought with you. I know firsthand what it's like to have to go to District 1 on one side of West Dallas and District 6 on the other. So I believe West Dallas needs to be unified. I believe from Loop 12 to the bridge, from Trinity River to 30, it all needs to be in one state district.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, you will be first in this question. What will you do to help existing residents fight gentrification? What will you do to restore existing homes and businesses and prevent them from being flushed out of their community?
So if you know me, you know that this is what I'm a champion of. When 300 families were being evicted in West Dallas, I fought tooth and nail against board members from the north who did not want $300,000 to go to West Dallas. I fought. I stayed up at 3, 4 in the morning fighting to make sure that that money went to the hands of West Dallas. I don't have to talk about what I will do is because I've already done it. I've already created home ownerships in West Dallas, South Dallas, basically every part of this district. I've helped individuals stay in their homes. Many times people don't even see it. People have sat in my office trying to work out tax situations. These are things that I've already done. And when it comes to gentrification, I know firsthand how to combat that. We need things like a community land trust. We need things like a neighborhood stabilization overlay. We need a lot of things that the state legislator can pass through legislation like House Bill 2480. So those are the things that I will do. I will continue to fight that we keep West Dallas our West Dallas.
With regard to gentrification, long and short of it, it's an issue. And I have experience as well in this issue, in particular helping seniors age in place. So all too often, seniors are in their home that they've worked literally their whole life to pay off, and it's ripped out from under them. From a variety of ways, being taxed out of their house, being coded out of their house, or when they pass, not having the proper documents in order to pass it on to their loved one because of a clouded title. And so with regard to helping seniors keep their homes and stay in their home, I will make sure that I continue to work directly with constituents through casework. Session is only once every other year. And so it's really important that we have a state representative who understands constituent casework and how to navigate agencies and helping constituents do that, and I've done that before, but also doing year-round programming to make sure constituents understand what kind of documents they need to keep their home. And so if elected, I will certainly work to do those things throughout the district.
Thank you. I want to know if you think that you have fully answered the question about redistricting. Is there something else that you would like to say, because that's such a critical issue for this district. The state legislature will be doing redistricting in 2020. So do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm not quite sure what you were referring to when you said not completely answering the question, because I started off saying that I would work very aggressively to make sure that West Dallas was in one district. What I was speaking to in terms of what could not be done was the truth. The state does not do redistricting at the city level. It does not do redistricting at the county level. It does not do redistricting at the school board level. So I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. What I can promise to is what the state legislature is responsible for. With that being said, because I have a successful track record of working with and when necessary, suing the state government into compliance, that's what I can pledge to do. If we don't get fair maps coming out of the state legislature, I promise you, I'll be happy to put my name on another lawsuit to make sure we sue into compliance.
I wanted West Dallas for sure to know my stance, and that's why I specifically said to keep in one House district. So that's my stance on that. I believe not only just one House district, but I think it's very important that we are in the right House district, that our interest is not competing with those in other parts of the city. And so I know these things because we've experienced these things. These are things that we've talked about over kitchen tables. And so that's my stance on it. There are rumors that certain people will, not anyone here, but certain people would like West Dallas out of District 100. I don't believe that. Not anyone here, but there are rumors that are been spread about that. And so I believe that West Dallas needs to be not only in one House district, but it needs to be in the right House district.
Thank you. What would be your priority of following these three issues for your district? State your priority and then why. Housing, education, and violent crime.
Could you restate the question?
Yes. What would be your priority of following the following issues on housing, education, and violent crimes for this district? What is your priority? And then why? I'm not sure what order. When I ask the district and you finished, you will start this question.
Okay. So can I get 1 minute per? No. It's kind of hard to answer these questions in 1 minute. But very simple, housing, gentrification. We're not the only neighborhood that's dealing with this. 10th Street, South Dallas, dealing with the same thing. We have to put the necessary perimeters. I don't know why it keeps going out with me, but we have to keep the necessary perimeters to make sure that we stop disruptive development, that we make sure that people are able to stay in their home, people that are able to age in place, as Lorraine has said, and people are able to afford the neighborhood that they want to live in and the neighborhood that they grew up in. In regards to education, I believe was... Education, early childhood education, very simple. We have to make sure that we have mandatory or open pre-K for all, and that we get kids early on. Early childhood education was the thing that changed the direction of my life. And then violent crimes, I say all the time that poverty is the mother of crime. If you fix poverty, you'll fix crime.
I agree with James. There's a lot of meat there to try to cover in a minute. For me, I would actually start with education as well. The reason why is because education really is a ticket to upward mobility. I'm a product of public schools, K through 12. All three of my collegiate degrees in higher education are all at state schools. So I do believe in, and I've experienced in firsthand, that when we have quality public education, then you can be in a situation where you can take care of yourself and take care of your family and take care of your community. So education would be number one for me. Two would be housing. Housing is a huge problem. We are in a situation now, we have a housing crisis. In many cases, housing is not affordable. So that is something we definitely need to address. And finally, violent crime. The reason why I put that last is not because it's not a priority, it is. But I believe that if we address education and housing, then I think that the outflow of that is that the violent crime will in fact be reduced, because what we do find in most statistics is that there's a correlation between income and ability to provide and crime itself.
Thank you. Do you have any ideas or solutions to make college more affordable? And Ms. Barraville is first.
Thank you. One of the first things, and when you said that, I immediately thought about the Texas Dream Act. The reason why is because we have some really talented students who, by no fault of their own, came here and they are not citizens because their parents brought them here through no thought or no fault of their own. I personally know of someone who is in California right now because Texas did not want to invest in her. And so I think it's critically, I can't state how critical it is that we have kids that are Texan in every other regard who then feel that they're forced to go out of state because they don't have the opportunities afforded them. So the first thing I would do is make sure we keep the Texas Dream Act because it is under attack under this Texas legislature. In terms of other options to keep education affordable, I'm the only person in this campaign with a plan to fully fund our schools. So right now, small businesses collect sales tax from all of us. When you buy a bag of chips, 8 cents goes to sales tax. But a lot of people don't know that that sales tax is not always remitted back to the state. That's our money. And so when we fully collect the sales tax that we've paid into, that will help us pay for our public schools and ensure that college is affordable.
So it is a shame that a kid can graduate with honors in Texas and then miss out on economic opportunity because they cannot afford to go to college. So many people who are smart, who are talented, who can do great things are working minimum wage jobs, 45-hour or below, or 45K or below, because they cannot go to school. We have to fix this. And the way we fix this is very simple. It's a plan that simply says this: if your family makes below a certain amount and you graduate and you get accepted into a state school, you need to go for free. That is the only way that we create economic mobility and economic opportunity for those that need it most.
What will you do to improve air quality in Texas, especially in North Texas? North Texas has a 35% higher death rate from lung diseases than the rest of the state.
You can go first if you like, because I don't know.
I'm trying to follow the rules. I know that. Follow the rules.
So West Dallas knows all too well what it's like to experience economic injustice. My dad told me stories how the lead smeltering plant actually hired him and his siblings to clean up the lead without any protective gear. So we know what that's like. We fought that for years. Many of the people sitting in this room have fought this for years. And so I think that the state has a responsibility, has a moral obligation to assure that communities of color, because most of the times it's communities of color do not have to live, work, or play near areas that, factories that pollute the air. We have dealt with that from concrete plants to cement plants, and unfortunately we are dealing with Republicans who think that air quality is a partisan issue. It is not, it's a people issue, and we have to approach it as such.
One of the chief roles of the legislature is to have oversight on the agencies that affect our life. Two of those agencies that have a big impact on environmental quality are TCEQ and the Texas Railroad Commission, which is actually should be renamed the Oil and Gas Commission. But in any case, these agencies, so for example, Railroad Commission obviously regulates oil and gas. TCEQ is basically the state version of the EPA. And so what we're currently facing is we have an environment in our state legislature that is very pro-big business. And I think it is important to have economic development, but it should not be at the cost of people's lives and the air they breathe and the water that they drink. That is unacceptable. And I think that I can speak for both of us when I say that economic mobility is key. But you can't participate in the economy if you're not healthy, which is why we need to increase access to health care, which is the reason why we do need to make sure that adequate regulations are in place to ensure that our environment is a healthy one where everyone can thrive.
Thank you. What are your views on low-income housing in Dallas? There is no place in Dallas for low-income families. And first is Ms. Mirabel.
Thank you. We chatted about this earlier, and I could not agree more. We do have a housing crisis in our city. I, as in a role of a state representative, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, will work and literally try to unturn every stone to make sure we are innovative in how we approach this. Some of this might include tax abatements. Some of this might include mixed income developments. But at the root of this, we need to make sure that people who are in the home that they own can stay in that home. Because what we're seeing is that their property is being yanked out from under them. And then because of all the other things that are going on in their neighborhood, all of a sudden they've been taxed out of their house. So I think the first part for us to start with is how are we going to protect seniors in particular, which is, in my opinion, the most vulnerable community in the situation, making sure that there's a path for them to stay in their home and also pass that home down to their loved ones. I see my time is running short. There's so much more I could say about this, and I'm sure James would agree.
So the quickest and cheapest way to provide affordable housing is to make sure that the existing affordable housing stock lasts. That means home repair. We have to make sure that we are funding agencies like TSHAC to make sure that money is being funneled through our municipalities and our nonprofits to assure that the existing affordable housing stock is kept up, that we make sure that it lasts. That is so important. It's a shame when someone has to move out of a community that they helped build because they can no longer afford it. I have family members who had to move out of West Dallas, not because they wanted to, but because it was simply too expensive for them. It's a community that they built on their backs when there were no roads in West Dallas, when it wasn't popular, when people didn't even want to live here. They lived here. They put their money into local businesses. And so we have to make sure that existing housing stock stays affordable.
Thank you. Actually, you're going to be next, but oh my God, that's the question. Okay. All right. For both of you candidates, of course, do you consider yourself a bipartisan leader or a straight ticket party person? And you're first.
So I am not a party insider, and I've been attacked during this election for not being a party insider, because I believe that while I am a registered Democrat and a precinct chair, I've been a precinct chair for about 8 years, about 7 years, I believe that it should be people over party. And when you have the intentions to wave the party flag higher than the needs of your constituents, I think that's a problem. When you cling to Democratic talking points more than your message is tailored to what the needs are of your community. And if elected, that's all I'm going down. I'm not going down there to stay forever. I'm not going down there to be another Wendy Davis. I'm going down there because West Dallas and South Dallas and Buckner Terrace and Lakewood, we have issues that if we don't fix now, if we don't have a leader with courage to fix now, those neighborhoods will be gone.
So both of us are precinct chairs. I have been a precinct chair for a decade, and so obviously been active in my neighborhood. But I am an unabashed Democrat. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I'm not a Democrat. I'm very proud to be a Democrat. And I think one of the chief problems that we have in our state is that we've been a one-party state for far too long. And so I think that government works best when there's more than one party in control. And so if we win in this next cycle, we have 12 seats we have to hold and 9 we have to pick up. Whoever is successful, it will be a narrow majority. And that is how our framers intended it. And so I'm not going to get up here and say I'm not a Democrat or that I haven't been a precinct chair for a long time, but I bring that up so that you know my Democratic credentials, and I stand by those values. But with that being said, if we can get more balance in our state government, we can do the things that we want to do, like ensuring access to health care, like ensuring that there is more funding for the programs that we care about, education, justice reform, voting rights, the things that really matter. We cannot affect the change that we want to see when we have voter suppression tactics that are literally trying to stop us from voicing our own voice. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you.
The next question is about criminal justice, and discuss your thoughts on the death penalty. Is it fairly administered across the state of Texas? That's 2 questions.
So quick answer, I do not support the death penalty. The reason why is because programs like the Innocence Project has really, and also our former district attorney, Craig Watkins, who's endorsing me, and our current district attorney, Crusoe, have really shown us what happens when former prosecutors like Henry Wade are allowed to run amok and sometimes convict people that should not have been convicted, who are truly and actually found innocent. So one, I do not support the death penalty because of that. One innocent life that is murdered by the state is too many for me. On the second issue, I feel like in terms of, and I want to make sure I answer your question. It was more.
What are your thoughts on the death penalty? And then the other, is it fairly administered across the state?
Thank you. I was going to say justice reform, but I didn't. I want to make sure I specifically answered your question. Sorry, I see my time is running up. In terms of that, my opinion on it is that the reason why we need justice reform is because the hand of justice has not always been fair. I can personally speak to that. Literally, my father was assaulted in front of me. I captured the incident as best I could on video, and I literally had to sue the Dallas Police Department just to get the internal affairs report. So when I say that these issues are personal for me, I really mean it, and that's why I'm fighting.
So I am not in favor of the death penalty. Do I believe it has been fairly administered? Absolutely not. Texas has one of the highest, if not the highest, death penalty rates in the country. And so we are a state that's too quick to pull the trigger or push the light or inject or whatever we do. We're too quick to do that. And many of us, we have stories that we can tell how our families were ripped apart and destroyed because of an unfair justice system. And I think this is something that we have to look at more intently. We have to look at and create strategic plans on how we, number one, restore nonviolent offenders and bring rehabilitation to their lives, and that we are not so focused on criminalizing and throwing in jail and locking away the key, but that when these individuals come out, that they can be productive citizens of our system.
Okay. Thank you. Another criminal justice issue is, what will you do to prevent the pipeline to prison in Texas? And Mr. Armstrong, you're first.
So I think it actually starts before someone is in the back of a police car. I think it starts way before high school. I think it actually starts in elementary. I think the pipeline to prison, I think the pipeline to prison, I think it starts very early on. And so we have to go back to how are we handling education? Because when our children are exposed to other things, when our children know at a very early age that I visited a hospital and I now want to be a doctor, they are not as susceptible to crime. And so when it comes to the pipeline to prison, the prison to pipeline, I'm not saying it correctly, but we have to do a better job of catching our children early and investing in them early on, not waiting until they get to high school, because once they get to high school, it's pretty much too late. We have to do a better job of investing in early childhood education.
I do agree that education is a critical component in this, and the term pipeline to prison a lot of times comes from the research that shows that reading a level at a certain age in elementary school is a predictor for likelihood to enter prison, and that's where the whole thing came from. Obviously, we've talked about it, and I don't think we disagree. Education is a priority. So the other part to this, I think, and I hate to go back to the criminal justice issue, but we really have to look at how our justice is administered. Because at the same time, if we have a juvenile system that doesn't really act accordingly, then we have a possibility and a likelihood of ensuring that that person is going to ultimately end up in the prison system, and that is not what we want. And so it's not something that a lot of people talk about, and it's not popular, but we really need to look also making reforms in our juvenile justice system as well.
Thank you. The state provides more money per student to charter schools. How will you, to charter school students, more money goes to the charter school per charter school student than it does to traditional public schools. How will you ensure education funding from the state level is equally distributed to all districts and charter schools are not getting the bulk of the funds? And that is Ms. Bearbell first. Oh, whoopsie, excuse me.
Can y'all hear me okay? I just want to make sure. Okay. So I am not supported by charter school interests. It is partially because of that the Dallas AFL-CIO, which incidentally a large contingent of their membership is the Alliance Federation of teachers that work in DISD, are supporting me. I am fully committed to ensuring that our schools have the funding necessary in order to do the job of educating our students. But that starts with making sure that charter schools are not receiving more money per pupil than our public school students. We have a situation right now that public schools are under attack in our state. They're not fully funded, and we need to have someone in this role who has a plan on how to address that. I mentioned earlier we're not collecting all of our revenue. That is mission critical to ensure that our schools are fully funded. And also I do support a moratorium on increasing charter schools until we can make sure there's more accountability and that the funding is more equally distributed.
So if you know me, we've been fighting in West Dallas for schools like C.F. Carr. You know that I am pro-public school. Now, I have a cousin here who is a dedicated private school, chartered school administrator, but we go back and forth on this issue. I believe that we need to invest in our public schools. I actually believe that if we invest in our public schools every session, that we will do a better job of balancing out our state budget. And so when it comes to charter schools, I actually believe that we need to have enforce stricter regulations on our charter schools to make sure that these schools are not receiving money and failing our students. And so we've seen how charter schools can be disruptive and can destroy our community, leaving our neighborhood schools empty and near closing. And so while I appreciate their attempt to educate our schools in a different format, I do believe that we should make investing in public schools a priority.
will you hold nonprofits accountable when they say they are truly helping existing residents? And if so, how? I'm going to reread that. Would you hold nonprofits accountable when they say they are truly helping existing residents, but they're not? And how will you do so? So, Mr. Armstrong.
So I feel like this is no. I actually run a nonprofit, but I know firsthand how a lot of this has gotten out of hand. When I came to Builders of Hope, we had 7 staff members. We were in financial trouble, and I had to make some hard decisions in order to make sure that every dollar was going to residents of West Dallas. And that has been my mission. Many of you are from neighborhoods that have received grant money from Builders of Hope. That was something that had never been done before. But I make it a point that every revenue we have coming in, because I believe in tithing, that we have 10% going back out into the community in dollars for dollars, not just in services, not just in product, but in dollars. So I've made it my mission to expend funds into communities that we impact. And so I'm not sure how the state rep position can hold nonprofits accountable, but I do believe that nonprofits should be audited regularly, whether you receive federal money or not. And that is something that if I'm able to institute, that I will.
I think that any time an entity receives public money, they need to be held accountable for that. Of course, if private money, it's up to that entity that's giving that money to them to hold them accountable. But when we're talking about our money, that is sacred. That is money that people working every day, put aside for the greater good for all of us. And so with that being said, any nonprofit that receives any sort of state funding or state support should be held accountable for that. And that's one of the things that the state legislature does. They have the ability to make sure that there's audits. They also have the power of the purse. And if an organization is not upholding their end of the bargain, then they should not be funded anymore by the public. So that's the long and short of it. I think the best way to hold an organization accountable, many times, unfortunately, is through the purse strings, but that's also what the state legislature does.
I would like to ask, the next question is about equal pay for women. What is your position on equal pay for women? And Ms. Barabel, you're first.
I am obviously the only woman in the race, and I'm not going to allege that James is anything other than that. But I'm also not going to allege that he doesn't support women. I think we can all probably agree that women, many times, we're the head of our households. And even whether it's a single parent or married, I know in my house I'm the mom in chief. So, but needless to say, if I'm fortunate enough to serve, I would be one additional woman in the state house. There are only 33 members. 22% of the state legislature are women. That is pathetic. Women are 50% of the population. But we do have a lot of strong male allies, including our caucus chair, who do support initiatives to ensure that we have access to equal pay for equal work. But I can assure you that it is something I'm committed to.
So I know firsthand what it's like to see a mother working and having to work 3 jobs just to struggle. When you taste poverty, you never forget it. You can't shake it, no matter how much money is in your bank account, no matter if you move to a different neighborhood. I have flashbacks sometimes of my mom coming in just tired from working. And so not only do I believe in equal pay for women, but I believe that we should raise the minimum wage to a livable wage. That if you are working a 40-hour job, there's no reason why you should have to come home and decide between paying for medicine or purchasing a meal. These are things that the reason why I got into this race, because our system is broke. I deal with it every day. I see it. I see the despair on people's face. I see when people cannot help themselves. And so we have to do what is necessary to make sure that economic opportunity is available for everyone.
Actually, this is the last question because there will be closing statements by each of our candidates. What is the first bill you would introduce if you were elected? And so, Mr. Armstrong.
So many of you, and many of us, we worked on this bill with former State Rep Eric Johnson, House Bill 2480. Unfortunately, it did not pass due to politics, but that is the absolute first bill that I will reintroduce. I think that it had all of the right elements to assure that West Dallas and South Dallas and other communities who are faced with gentrification leading to displacement are safe, that people are able to stay in their homes. You don't have to wonder why I'm going down there. That's the only reason. And I think if we don't tackle that, you can deal with health care, you can deal with criminal justice reform, but if people cannot afford to stay where they live, to stay where they live, to stay in their home, then all those other matters are really invalid. So that would be my first bill. My focus will be economic opportunity through early childhood education, economic development, and public safety.
I mentioned this earlier, but Medicaid expansion, it is literally the #1 thing that we must do. If our state legislature hopefully gets a narrow majority of the Democrats do agree, and some Republicans agree, that we do need to expand access to Medicaid. And that can be done literally with a stroke of a pen, because that's what a legislature does. It passes legislature and signs it into law. If we get a narrow majority in the House, that is going to force the governor's hand to work with the Democrats. Every year, Texans turn down $10 billion a year, so far $100 billion with a B dollars in federal money that we've paid into to ensure Texans have more access to health care. That is unacceptable. Full stop, period. So that would be my first and my chief goal right away upon being sworn in. The other piece of this is that investment. When you want to talk about economic development, we turned down 250,000 jobs because we turned down that money. And so this is something that we need. And it's not just the moral responsibility to do to save our fellow Texans, it's also the fiscally responsible decision to ensure we continue creating jobs here in Texas.
And now we've come to the conclusion of our program tonight, or our forum tonight. And what was your final decision?
That I deferred, so I'll be last.
Okay, so you'll be last. Okay, so Mr. James Armstrong will give his closing statement, and it will be for 3 minutes.
First and foremost, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on. I was feeling a little down because my hometown didn't throw a debate or a forum, but I'm thankful that you guys have put this on. You guys have always upheld the true values of democracy, and I appreciate what you do. I got into this race because of my service in West Dallas. And I can admit that when I first came back to West Dallas, a little bit younger, had less gray hair, had a little hair on my head. Ambition was the reason, desire to be seen, but poverty and dealing with individuals who are faced with dire situation, it has a way of changing you. It has a way of maturing you when you realize that you are the only solution to someone sleeping in a safe bed or a home. When you realize that a great responsibility has been put on your shoulders to make sure that those who cannot speak for themselves, those who cannot stand up for themselves, that they have somebody with integrity and with character speaking and leading for them. That's the reason why I got in this race. I got in this race because seniors should not have to decide between medicine, paying for medicine, or paying for a meal. I got into this race because every child should be able to have the necessary resources to realize their potential. I got in this race because we know small business owners who feel that legislation and the system is hindering their business rather than allowing it to grow. I got in this race not for me, not because of my situation, but I got in this race for you. And whatever happens, I'm going to still be serving, hopefully as your state rep, because that's what I've been called to do. I'll say this, and I'll sit down. We know what it's like to have somebody representing us who is a political insider, someone who is ruled and governed by higher powers. And we know what it's like to have a true public servant representing us. And we've seen the difference. I'm asking you to vote for me for House District 100. You can go to ArmstrongForTexas.com to learn more. Thank you.
No applause, please.
I'm not sure if you remember, but I mentioned earlier, we have 150 state legislators. And each district can only elect one person in order to fight for us and deliver results. Everyone who has filed in this race, James and I, even in the first round, we're all Democrats. And so I don't think you're going to find any disagreement on the issues. We all support health care, education, justice reform, voting rights, living wage, all the things that we care about as Democrats. But the key difference in this race is going to be qualification and ability to deliver results. And it is because of that track record that so many leaders have gotten behind this campaign. Elected officials, precinct chairs, and community leaders alike agree that based on what I have done, doing job fairs, doing small business workshops, doing community-based nonprofit work, doing casework, that I am the most qualified person for this role. I have an 8-month-old daughter. Trust me, I'm not doing this just because it's something fun to do. I'm doing this because I literally have seen someone die because of state policy. I'm not interested in higher office. I'm literally interested in making sure we get access for all Texans. That's what I'm here to do. I also want you to know that I'm a fighter. Last election, I was Better Work statewide outreach director. And in that role, I was responsible for picking up the 12 seats that we picked up in the last round. I was directly involved in the various regional programs around the state. And it's because we picked up those 12 seats that this last session wasn't as tough as the sessions prior. So if I'm fortunate enough to serve our community, I'm going to work very aggressively to make sure that we get some people down there in Austin who are going to put people first, just like we do. Put people in there who are going to decide that we want to vote on the issues and what is best for Texans, not what's best for a party. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's the work I have done. And if I'm not successful for some reason, I'm going to continue doing that work. And you know that because that's what I've been doing all this time. That's how I met so many of you in this room. So that's not going to stop. And I'm really glad that we agree on that. And worst case scenario, you know that I'll sue them into compliance. And unfortunately, that's the way we've had to do redistricting and so many other issues in our state for so long because we have had a one-party control in our state. And hopefully we can get past that in this next election that we have coming up. We have some very important roles up and down the ballot that we have to make sure that our voice is heard on. But worst case scenario, even as a private citizen, I'm not afraid to put my name on a lawsuit. I'm not afraid to go help find witnesses and make sure the job gets done. So I'm not going to stop. Regardless of what role I have, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to make sure we get the results for our community that we need. And I also want to thank you for coming tonight. You are obviously concerned about our community, and that should be applauded. None of this happens without you, so thank you.
Now you may applaud. Thank you to you both. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to really talk about your role in all of this. You all are the part that makes democracy work. You may be registered to vote. I hand out voter registration cards often at meetings and say, oh, I voted. But I bet you have friends that have not registered. Or perhaps they moved, because so many people move these days, and they need to change their address. and your dress has to match that on your identification. So kind of be diligent and help people to make sure they're following all the procedures so that their vote counts. You are the check and to create the balance in our democracy. And that's where it's important for you, not just now, well, here it goes for me too, but it's important for right now, but it's also whoever gets elected needs to hear from you. You need to tell your stories and guide them in their decision making. It will empower them. Financial support is also important in politics. You don't want to have too much and be out of bounds in something, but you do need some money to operate. And that's why there's all of that talk on the television about how much fundraising has been made. It's just plain old basic. You've got to have some money to operate. I want to be sure that you know about the census and ask if you can come up and make a statement, please, about the census.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen Mendez. I'm here with my partner, Martin Science, and we're representing the census. Mainly we're hiring hundreds of people to come and help us count. You know that every county and city gets money proportion to, the residents that they have, and it helps, it helps all of us because the money is used to build schools, churches, and, any kind of funding, everything that we need. So if you know anybody that needs a job, please come see us, pass the word around. You make your own hours, evenings, weekends, and also when the census comes around, please get counted. I mean, we have big campaigns. Every city is doing all kinds of events. We have posters going out, so if you don't get to participate in the hiring event, then maybe you can participate in, for sure participate in getting counted. Thank you.
Are you looking for people to hire?
Hire.
Also?
Yes, that's exactly. This is our first campaign right now. Is hiring. We're hiring hundreds of people to help us count. So we are here as recruiters, assistant recruiters. But the next wave would be the campaign will be to help to get counted.
So who do they contact to apply?
You can apply on 2020census.gov. Or you can also text Texas Jobs, one word, to 313131, or extra cash to 313131. And you can forward that. That's not on the card. And you can, send that number to all your friends, family, and put it on Facebook, whatever you like to do with it. But try.
We're going to give you all this information. The website's on the pamphlets. All the information that we have. The website is on there. So if you're all interested, like the candidate stated, this is very important,
Yes.
especially right now with the census, because what's going to happen every decade we do the census, and what's also going to happen is Dallas County is also probably would be eligible for another state representative. That's why we state it's very, very important for everybody to be counted. Because what's going to happen is we may lose, like Ms. Lorraine stated, we may lose billions of dollars because you are not counted. We want that money to come here. We need schools. We need rec centers. We need somewhere where the kids can go after school. This is where the money goes. It goes to all that.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's
Correction.
yes.
It goes to help community centers. We need more community centers. more places for the elderly to go. We need all this, so we need everybody, friends, relatives, everybody in your area to be counted.
Thank you very much. There are a number of people that are really afraid to come forward to be counted. So that's one of those things that is very, it's important for you to encourage them to still be counted. There is, from everything I read, they will be safe. From everything I read, there are protections. So it's important that every citizen, every resident be counted. The League of Women Voters also will have voters' guides in future elections during this, during the spring and fall elections. And you can go online at vote411.org. You know, it's like call 411 if you need something. You can vote written out 411.org. I really appreciate your coming tonight. It's great to see all of you here. I love you all, so I'm looking forward to seeing y'all soon. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone would like a voter registration form, I have them with me this evening.